Hello and welcome to the latest edition of our Sustainability Perspectives podcast, where we hear from a range of different packaging experts to learn more about how their company tackles the sustainability challenges the industry faces. My name is Elisabeth Skoda, and today we will take a closer look at coatings and their role to boost packaging functionality, both for plastic and paper applications, and also their role in making packaging more sustainable. We'll look at some of the challenges and opportunities around this, and we'll also discuss collaborations and also take a look at the future of sustainable coatings. So, with me to do this, I'd like to welcome Gilles, who is Business Unit Director, Head for Circular Economy Coatings for Packaging at Inks and Coatings expert Siegwerk. So, welcome, Jill. Welcome to the podcast. And looking forward to an interesting conversation today.
Likewise. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I'd like to start this podcast with quite a broad question. What role can coatings play to make a pack more sustainable in general?
Yeah, so the packaging industry is facing, I would say, multiple issues currently. And of course, one of them is a strong need to define and design more sustainable solutions. So the critical point is how we define more sustainable solution. In general, it's enhancing the possibility to recycle or making sure that the packaging will have a limited impact on the environment and also the human being in general. So this is where we need how the industry need to rethink the way packaging are designed and the functionality they have. When we look at the structure we have today, packaging, some of them are relatively complex structure and hence have potential impact on the environment or the human being. So the logic behind coatings is basically trying to reduce the impact and trying to make the packaging more sustainable in general. Coatings is a way to enhance the recyclability of packaging or their circularity by developing less complex structure, whether it's film-based, plastic-based, or also paper-based structure. The reduced impact that coatings have during the recycling scheme, for example, is super important. And this is actually one of the key advantages of coatings compared to some of the complex structure we know where you have multiple type of plastic that are co-laminated, aluminum, paper, and so on. So this is the main advantage of the coatings.
And I wanted to zoom in a little bit on what you said there about what role can coatings play to make a non-recyclable packaging structure recyclable. But how can it help there?
Yeah, the big two trends that we see today is also the fact that we need to reduce the volume of packaging and the size of them and the weight of them for different reasons. One of them being, for example, reducing shipping costs and making it more convenient, but it's also one imperative from the coming PPWR, Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation in Europe, having packaging which are designed for what they will contain and not necessarily too big, for example. So one way to do that is to move from rigid packaging towards flexible packaging. So we see a clear trend here where plastic case, for example, are replaced by plastic pouch. So that's one typical case. The other strong trend is the move towards paper-based, flexible paper-based solution. And again, it comes from either plastic-based packaging that are converting to paper-based or also existing paper box that are moving towards paper pouch, for example. In both cases, whether it's flexible packaging or flexible paper, the reduction of thickness, for example, and the move towards monoplastic solution in the case of plastic film needs at some point to be compensated because we have a loss of performance, for example, oxygen barrier, grease barrier, all these kind of things when we move towards those solutions. So that's typically where coatings can play a role to compensate this loss of property. Same with paper. We all know that paper is a great solution. Today, the recycling stream exists very well, actually, in most of the regions in the world. But of course, paper has some limitation when it comes to resistance to humidity, water, grease, and so on. And again, that's where coating will play a role and enhance those properties and make sure that at the end of the day, we have a pack that is safe to use and have the right barrier solution.
That makes sense, yes. And I'll ask you a bit more about the challenges around these coatings for plastic and paper applications in a minute. But before, I wanted to talk a little bit about food packaging. I wanted to get your thoughts on what the particular challenges are and how coatings can address them.
Yeah, this is by far the main segment in the packaging industry, and food market is huge, and packaging is widely used for packaging food items. It comes with multiple challenges. You're right. It's clear when we look at making food packaging more sustainable, it should not come with reducing the safety aspect. It's important to keep that packaging. The first property of packaging is to protect the item it is packed, and this is absolutely critical for either food packaging or pharmaceutical packaging. That's why I'm convinced that moving towards paper, for example, is not always going to be the right solution. In some cases, we know that plastic might still be the best solution, but still, there are ways to make plastic more sustainable or easier to recycle. So, and again, that's where coatings, for example, grease resistance or oxygen resistance, oxygen barrier solutions for film are critical to make sure that people can move towards PE or PP laminated film, so monopolymer film in this case. Siegwerk has always taken regulation and safety in a very important way. So we consider it as a critical factor of success for coatings as well. So we know it very well for ink, but we know that in the space of the coating space, there are specific constraints when it comes to regulation, direct contact and migration aspects, all those kind of things, which are also very regional dependent. So that some of them are true in Europe, but this is not going to be the same in the US. So it's very important also to acknowledge that and to understand these aspects when we develop new coating solutions. Absolutely. So food is clearly one of the main focus, obviously, because this is the main market. Now we realize that solutions need to take in consideration the safety aspects first, and then of course the technical aspects, which are related to food items. Yeah.
That makes sense, yes. And yeah, I wanted to ask a little bit more about the distinct challenges when applying coatings for plastic and paper applications and how to give them the functionality that's needed for the product.
Yeah. It's a very good question. I am convinced that coatings won't be applied at one segment in the value chain. So this is something I think that is super important as the industry is moving towards the solution. I think everybody wants to see how they can capture part of this value, this new value. I don't think coatings would be only applied at the printing or converting stage, but they might also be applied during the manufacturing of the substrates themselves, whether it's film or paper. Now, it's important to understand that the way the coatings will be applied, depending on where it will be applied in the value chain, is going to be very different. The type of coating equipment, the type of requirement, because we know, for example, paper mills tend to apply coatings already or chemicals in general at a relatively high speed, for example, have usually a more difficult way to shift from one type of chemical to another. So they like to run with long run, for example. So this kind of constraint needs to be well understood in order to develop the right solution for them. While at the converting and printing stage, we might also apply coatings, but with using different equipment. Usually they like to use the existing equipment they have for printing application. So for example, flexo printing equipment. So again, we need to design our coatings knowing that type of constraint, making sure that the things like viscosity and so on will be adjusted and adapted to the coating equipment that our customers have. So this is the typical constraint we see. And one critical aspect as well is the drying aspect of the coatings. In order to have a better performance, we need to take that into consideration. Some people are already well equipped and have ways to, for example, use water-based solution. So in this case, a bit harder to dry, but if you have the right equipment, it's feasible. Now we know that in some instance, for example, particularly converters, converting film packaging don't necessarily have the proper drying equipment. They use solvent-based solution. Again, we need to acknowledge that and make sure that we develop the right solution based on this kind of contract. Yeah.
And you've talked about the challenges and technology in general. Could you talk me through how Siegwerk's coatings in particular address these and maybe give me some examples of products you might have both in plastic and paper packaging?
Yep, absolutely. So Siegwerk has a long history of working with the packaging industry and particularly the printers and converters by selling ink for quite a long time in this segments. So um, we have developed coatings in the first place, thinking about the specific needs that those customers have, but not only. So that's the interesting aspect. So we can supply water-based or solvent-based solution depending on who will apply them and for which solution they will be used. And we have solutions for paper-based and solvent-based and plastic-based, packaging. Uh, all our coatings, which enhance circular economy packaging, are sold under the Circuit brand, which stands for Circular Kit Solution. So basically, a solutions that is not targeting a specific only a barrier, for example, but performance, for example, but multiple barrier performance. So typically, our best products will be targeting strong, for example, water vapor resistance, oil and grease resistance combined with heat sealing performance for paper-based solutions. So this would be our circuit bar seal solution in this case. So that's when we think about paper-based solution. And when it comes to the plastic-based solutions, we have also multiple kit products. I would say the key ones are products that enhance the oxygen resistance of the film, which is by definition a weakness of PP or PE films, but also in some cases enhance the grease resistance. So typical application in this case would be for pet food or any greasy items we will need to pack. One important aspect that I want to bring to the table as well is that we have developed a range that can be specifically for the paper-based packaging. We have developed a range that can be used for printers and converters, and a range that it can be used for the paper mills and the coaters of the paper. So that is two different ranges, mostly because we know that the drying conditions and the viscosity is usually different depending on the type of coatings equipment they have. So that's actually why we developed this different solutions.
My next question, we often hear about how important collaborations are, and Siegwerk is quite prolific with collaborating with other companies and in the packaging value chain to boost sustainable packaging. And yeah, could you give me some examples of such collaborations and what they have achieved?
Yeah, absolutely. I truly believe, I'm absolutely convinced, and this is true in Siegwerk overall, that the move towards more sustainable packaging solution cannot be done or led by only one player in the market or one specific segment in the market. So we are all trying to develop better solutions. And it's a new way of doing packaging for everyone in the value chain. So that's why we truly believe that collaboration is critical. And it's particularly critical because it's a way to prove that the concepts are not only concepts, but actually work for real. So that's usually the way we address those collaboration projects. We want to test actual solution, commercial solution, and prove not only the technical viability of them, but also the economical viability of them. So that is a very important aspect of it. We had recently a few different projects where we worked on paper-based substrate, for example, with UPM this year. So we had a project where we manufactured peppermint pouches. So basically the idea was to prove that we could convert these typical pouch that are usually plastic based towards a paper based solution. So we used paper from UPM. We had the help of DG Press as the printing equipment that we used. And of course, our ink and coatings were applied on it to enhance the sealing of the pouch and also the barrier, particularly the moisture barrier in this case. So that's one example of on paper-based substrate that we had. And we also had a very interesting projects on plastic-based film where we promoted our circuit grease bar solution, where we were targeting specifically, in this case, pet food application. So that was done on a mono PE solution. So typically, this is where we also believe that proving the entire industry that this is a viable solution is super important. So in this case, we work with B&B and Wiedmüller and Hölscher in Germany as the partners to produce this pet food pouch.
Yes, like you say, collaboration really is the key to boosting sustainable solutions, isn't it? So yeah, my last question, wrapping up this podcast, I was wondering if you could tell me a bit more about trends that you foresee in the field of circular economy coatings and how Siegwerk is positioning itself to stay at the forefront of these innovations and further boosting sustainable packaging innovation.
Yeah, there are multiple trends. And of course, I would say some of them are uh, relatively critical to reach some targets. I would say the holy grail of the industry I would say is getting to a fully compostable or biodegradable solution. So whether it's based on a paper substrate or a biodegradable film solution with a bio-based coating solution, for example, on it to enhance the barrier performances. This is, as of today, still far away to answer to all the needs from the industry. Some application could be converted towards this kind of packaging solution, but it's still relatively rare. As soon as you need a long-term barrier performance, this is very critical to reach. But however, this is clearly an innovation trend that Siegwerk is following as well. And we have a strong innovation pipeline to develop this kind of coatings, fully biodegradable coating solution that can be applied either on paper or on biodegradable films as well. Some aspects that are also critical in our case that we see more and more is the fact that we need to take into consideration some regional aspects. What I mean by that is in some regions, like in Southeast Asia or in Latin America, for example, we realized that moisture resistance of film was sometimes a bit limited. So it sometimes sounds a bit counterintuitive, but barrier solutions or moisture barrier solutions for film, for PP or PE, is something that is required in those regions. So we also need to consider this kind of regional specificities in order to develop solutions that can actually answer to the needs not only of the European continent or the American continent, but all the world, basically. Yeah. So those are, I would say, some examples of the big trends we see currently on the market and which are working on to address them.
Hmm. Great. Yeah, we'll watch this space and see how things develop. There's definitely a lot happening. So, yeah,
Mhm.
exciting times ahead.
Absolutely.
Great. So, yeah, that brings us to the end of our conversation and our podcast today. And just, yeah, leaves me to say thank you very much, Gilles, for being here and for sharing your expertise on coatings.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me and looking forward to collaborate with the entire packaging value chain. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, as usual, quick reminder to our listeners: make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any podcast episodes. We have, at least one of them coming out once a week. Thank you very much. Goodbye.